Hi everyone, Hannu TheHande here, and welcome back to the Leaders of Finland series. Now in my Juha Sipilä video, you might have seen me use this particular graphic, which showed three infamous center party individuals. Two people on the left of this are, of course, our first female Prime Minister Anneli Jäätteenmäki and our only four-term President Urho Kekkonen, both of whom have been the subjects of Leaders of Finland videos. And today I wanted to talk about the gentleman on the right, the one, the only, Paavo Väyrynen, a man with the longest continuous political career in Finnish history, stretching back to the very start of the 1970s. Now, depending on who you ask, Paavo Väyrynen can either be considered one of the most successful, most accomplished politicians in Finnish history, and easily the most accomplished and long-served, who has never been a prime minister nor a president. And while some respect him heavily for his devotion to various issues, there are also many that would describe Paavo Väyrynen as a vain, egotistical, power-hungry figure, and there are definitely more than a few instances from his long political history that I could point to. Now, because of his ridiculously long career, I'm not gonna go into every minute detail. So like I said, his political career originally started in 1970, and he has been a member of parliament ever since, with only a very brief 4-year short break between 1995 and 1990. And the reason for that short break was because he was a Europarliamentarian at the time, although he has also served in the European Parliament while being a member of the Finnish Parliament simultaneously. I guess at the time, though, he felt that he could only focus on one of the two. He first became a minister in 1975, specifically the Minister of Education, but he has also been the Minister of Labor, the Minister of Foreign Trade and Development, but his most consistent ministerial position was as foreign minister, where he served as a foreign minister in 4 governments: the second Sorsa government, the second Koivisto government, the fourth Sorsa government, and then finally in the Esko Aho government from 1991 till 1993. But his foreign trade and development ministership is actually his most recent, and he did that in 2007 till 2011 in 2 center-led governments, first under Vanhanen's second government, and then finally in Mari Kiviniemi's government. Now, during the early parts of his political career, that is to say the 70s and 80s, it's pretty obvious to see why Väyrynen was a very beloved and highly respected political figure. First of all, he was a very youthful center-party politician, and during this time, the center party had started to move slightly away from rural issues. As you might remember, the party was originally known as the Agrarian League, but then eventually changed its name to the Center Party because they felt that simply focusing on rural issues was not necessarily wise, as Finland, like many other countries, was becoming heavily urbanized. Väyrynen, however, was a bit of an outlier in this sense, a young politician who very much was in favor of Finnish farming and helping Finnish rural communities. In fact, Väyrynen's popularity was so great that he actually ran for the presidency for the first time in 1988, losing to Mauno Koivisto, who was running for his second term. But this would only be the first of his 3 times that he would run for the presidency. He did so again in 1994 and again in 2012, both times as the candidate for the Center Party, and most recently in 2018 as an independent candidate. However, losing the 1988 presidential election was kind of the first massive blow to him, and at that point in time it was looking like his political relevance was really dying down, and I mean, he did have a good run of it. However, in the mid-90s, something very dramatic happened. Finland joined the European Union following the massive recession in the early 90s, and Paavo Väyrynen, along with many other Center Party members, actually became one of the biggest critics of Finland's EU membership. Indeed, this is a fight that Väyrynen has still not really given up on. Of course, the reason the Center Party was so dead set against the European Union membership was because they happened to be in the opposition when Finland officially joined. And this anti-EU rhetoric was something that the Center Party was still very heavily pushing all the way through the late 90s into the early 2000s, until finally in 2003, when they got back into the government with the aforementioned Anneli Jäätteenmäki. And while Väyrynen was maybe a little bit irrelevant in Finnish politics during the mid-2000s, as I mentioned before, he managed to once again reach a ministerial position in 2007 when Vanhanen appointed him as the Foreign Trade and Development Minister. After this point, however, Väyrynen's position in the Center Party unfortunately dipped a little bit. He was given a lot of different empty honors, a lifetime membership to the party, for instance, which was really just the party's very nice way of saying, we respect all the work that you've done, but now maybe please go away. Except Paavo Väyrynen will never go away.
Oh, you touch my tra-la-la. My ding-ding-dong.
Now, I have a funny story about this. A couple of years ago, I was going over some of my old joke books, because I used to get a lot of them as birthday and Christmas presents, and I was looking through one of them, and it actually had a joke about Paavo Väyrynen and some other political figure. This joke book came out in the mid-90s, and I was really just thinking to myself, man, this joke has aged badly, until I realized, of course, that Väyrynen was still very much in Finnish politics at that time. Now, Väyrynen, of course, had been a lifelong Center Party politician, but after his stint in the Kiviniemi government, it was perhaps beginning to realize that not a lot of people were really listening to him or his opinions on most things. So in 2016, he did something very dramatic and broke away from the party. From 2016 to 2018, he was the head of one of these minor no-name parties known as the Citizen Party. But after that failed to attract any attention, he formed another party called the Seven Star Movement, or just the Star Movement at some point. However, it seems that with all of these parties, Väyrynen just constantly ended up pissing off the people he was running these parties with, because he actually got himself kicked out of the Star Movement in 2019, and was finally forced to return to his original political home, formally rejoining the Center Party in 2020. And here's the other thing, Väyrynen has even announced that he would still like to run for the party leadership, and even run in the next presidential elections. So in case you weren't counting, from 2016 to 2019, Väyrynen actually wasn't a member of the Center Party, which is why in the 2018 elections he ran as an independent candidate. So what exactly has been happening to Väyrynen in the last 2 decades that has caused his star to fall so much, even though the Center Party clearly still sees him as a kind of a semi-celebrity, or at least as noteworthy political figure, noteworthy enough that he actually managed to land that ministerial position, and noteworthy enough also he has even actually served a stint in the European Parliament from 2014 to 2018. However, the sheer fact that he has never been able to successfully run for president or successfully run for the prime ministership, I think does indicate that while many people seem to respect Väyrynen's devotion and doggedness in his political ideals, it's very obvious that a lot of people just don't really like him as a person. So like I said, one of the main issues that Väyrynen was well known for in his early years was the support of Finnish rural issues. And I think this is something that during the current century has not become a big political issue, and is something that the Center Party has, regrettably maybe, actually kind of forgotten about. But also Väyrynen's anti-EU sentiments are also something that hasn't aged particularly well. Now you have to understand that there was a lot of distrust from the Center Party during the early years of Finland's EU membership, and to some extent this was actually somewhat understandable. It was a big change. Finland had never really been integrated into the bigger European market before this. We were having to deal with all of these other new countries after the Soviet Union had fallen, and there were a lot of people also raising their nose at the fact that we were giving away certain national symbols like our own currency, the Finnish mark, when we adopted the euro. However, while Väyrynen's disapproval of the EU has never clearly died down, the center parties eventually did, and a big part of this was obviously them coming into power. They learned very quickly that they could really deal with the EU on a more personal level, and a lot of their apprehensions about EU's seeming control of Finland just weren't really true. And as such, while to this day there probably are still some members of the Center Party with various anti-EU sentiments, it is not something that the party really advertises anymore. In fact, this is partly the reason why the Finns Party became a thing, because as I mentioned in a few of my older videos, they were originally a collection of smaller centrist parties. However, in Väyrynen's case, it's also becoming very evident that he has very old-fashioned views. For instance, he is very much in favor of abandoning the euro and readopting the Finnish mark because he believes Finland would have better control of its internal markets if they could set the value of their own currency. But that's kind of ignoring the fact that the very reason we adopted the euro in the first place is because the value of the Finnish mark was so unstable and could dip rather dramatically at times. But obviously Väyrynen still has a very passionate following in certain parts of Finland. This is the only reason why he would continue to run for different political offices, and the fact that he is still able to do so. In fact, he ran in the municipal election that I made a video not too long ago. And I think at this point, Väyrynen is also experiencing a bit of a meme resurgence. Like, there's a lot of people that still support him, not because they necessarily believe in any of his ideals, but because he's been around for so long. People are just curious to see just how long can he make his political career last.
Oh, you touch my tra-la-la.
Now, do I think Väyrynen has any real shot of ever becoming president or prime minister? No, not really. Like I said, one of the biggest issues with Väyrynen as a personality is that while he is very passionate about various things, he also has a tendency of coming off a little bit egotistical. He's been noted for statements like admitting that he has only ever made 2 mistakes in all of his life. So yeah, he isn't exactly super humble. And the sheer fact that he doesn't seem to be able to garner any support outside of his very small dedicated following, in my view at this point, unfortunately just shows just how incredibly out of touch he is with current politics. He might be a passionate advocate for rural issues, and I do think every Finnish party does have enough room for at least a few anti-EU members in it. But the problem is that Väyrynen isn't really running on any platforms that would garner him any kind of wide support with the younger voters. Plus, Väyrynen has also not had the best relationship with the Finnish press, oftentimes accusing them of twisting his words. Although in his defense, Väyrynen has actually been the victim of a few fake news stories a few times. So here is a little summary of Paavo Väyrynen, a Finnish politician who won't stop and can't be stopped. This has been Hannu the Hande Mäkinen. See you on the next one.